So the title is a mouthful. So first thing I'll try to do is explain why this title, why this paradigm shift. I work for Bouygues Telecom. I've been the CIO of Bouygues Telecom for many years. Then I've been in charge of services, new services, innovation. And now mostly what I'm doing is I'm doing embedded software. I'm building boxes and software that run on those boxes. And I've been looking at efficiency, trying to make my company more efficient, both from a communication point of view and a process point of view. And doing this, I derived an interest into Enterprise 2.0 and Lean. And while I was thinking and working on this, I found that there were many interesting similarities. And I also found that the world was changing, that actually what all those similarities were pointing to is that we had to invent a new way of running the company. So that's what I'll try to explain to you today. And I have four parts. First, I will try to summarize why the world is changing. So I'm going to state a few obvious things, but it's good that we all share the same background. And I will sort of point out why we have challenges of complexity, agility, and communication. This being said, my second part will be about the possible answers to those challenges. And you will see that Lean and 2.0, quote unquote, will come into play. Then I'll try to convince you that Enterprise 2.0 is actually a solution to existing problems as opposed to a revolution or a new culture. Enterprise 2.0 is very often introduced to companies as with the following pitch: your clients, your customers are using all those Web 2.0 tools. Your young employees, they come from the digital native generation. You have to change. That's not at all my vision. All of this is true, but there are people who are better qualified to make that pitch. My vision is different. I've been working in large companies all my life, and I see, as possibly most of you do, that we are all buried in mail meetings and spending a lot of time trying to communicate as opposed to doing work. And my belief is that the Enterprise 2.0 set of tools and practices is a way to address those issues. So I'll try to make that pitch in 5 slides. And then I move to the other side of the coin, which is how do we use Lean at Bouygues Telecom? Very humbly, I'm much less of a specialist than everybody that you've heard talking about today. But what I will focus on is what does Lean tell me as a knowledge worker? How can I apply the Lean principles as a knowledge worker? And knowledge workers is a concept that fits IT, it fits services development, and it fits innovation. 3 of the things I've been doing in the last 10 years. So I have to guess this is the right button. Yeah. So the first simple idea is we live in a complex world. And it's not myself who's saying this, everybody's saying this. Harvard Business Review is saying this. And I hope that you agree that it's a complex world, otherwise we can have discussion after, during the break. The world is complex because it's of globalization, because the time is shrinking, because of many reasons. There is a very actually funny way of saying this. Thomas Friedman says, the world is complex because all the easy stuff has been done, so now what's left is the hard stuff. So that's one way to look at it. Another way is what Don Jones was saying this morning. The world is complex because the power has shifted to the consumers. And that actually makes the world much more complex from the company's perspective. My point is when the company is faced with much more complex problems, there are a number of things that change. Number one is complex problem requires everyone, whereas complicated problems required specialists. That was the world of a century ago or 10 years ago. When you have real complexity, you need to put everybody together, and we'll come on about that later on. And when you have a complex problem, you have to face it. You have to go and work on the Gemba. You have to face the problem. You cannot abstract the problem. You cannot take the problem. The conditions are not reproducible. You have to sort of be where the problem is, and all those people who are working on this problem have to communicate. So that's something I will be discussing, coming back on this later on. Second thing is, as we all know, in this new century, companies have to be more agile. That's something that everybody reads about. it works at many different levels. On the very short term, an agile company is a company that satisfies its customers in terms of speed, in terms of zero default, in terms of being customer focused. That's sort of the obvious definition. If you stand back a little more, one step further, because the customers are changing and their needs are changing, the company has to be agile in the sense that it has to shift, has to be able to move very quickly from one position to another because the customers are changing and the company has to follow those changes. So the keywords become flexibility, reactivity. And then if you step back once more, so thinking long term, then the company has to be able to learn. It has to be able to learn new skills, has to be able to learn how to collaborate, to work as teams, and it has to be able to develop the people, which is we're back to what we were saying this morning. So there's a small reference to a systemic vision. All this is saying the company lives in an environment that's moving very fast, and the company has to be able to follow its environment at all different levels. I mean, from very short term to very long term. A third sort of big, simple global idea that was stated by Langdon Morris actually a while ago is that in a complex world, the control command type of management doesn't work anymore. You have to move to what Langdon is calling recognition and response, which is not that different from the title of a book that will be presented tomorrow. So it's really taking the analogy from biology in the sense that instead of having a very structured vision of the organization, you have something which is much closer to a living organism and that adapts and reacts to what the customers are asking. A second very key idea that has emerged in the last 30 years is called the strength of weak ties. That's a great idea from Mark Granovetter. It says that whenever you have a big challenge in front of you, like you need to find a new job because you've been fired, you will get a lot of help from people who are different from you. And those people are your weak ties, people that you don't see that often. There is a law in sociology that says the people that you see very often, they are just like you. If you want to address the strengths of people who are a little bit different, you have to be able to leverage those people who are slightly different that you very often see less often, more rarely. And so that's now it's a scientific fact that has been proven in many, many situations. That's actually why when you try to build a team that has to solve challenges, you have to bring diversity into the team. And it's very important for our companies. That is, to solve difficult problems, we have to leverage all the skills as opposed to letting people talk to the same people all the time. And if you think about it, if you don't make an effort, you will tend to discuss with the same people throughout the year, the people who are in the same offices or the same organization. Trying to challenge your minds with people who are within the company but in different places requires some effort. And the third sort of interesting idea is that in a complex world, planning doesn't work as well as it used to. So I'm not saying it's not sort of now very fashionable to say that strategic planning is over, that you don't need to do planning anymore. I don't believe that for a second. I believe that planning is still useful, but clearly, and that's what François Julien tells us about the Chinese version of the strategy, which is about developing your situation potential and being an opportunist in the good sense of the term, as opposed to saying, I know what the future is going to be like. You're saying, well, I don't know what the future is going to be like, but I will build the right skills. And it means that instead of spending all your time planning and trying to create the future that you had predicted, you build skills by doing scenarios, by doing serious games, by doing a lot of practical things. And the word practice should sort of rings a bell. I mean, all that what we said this morning was that lean is something that you practice. It's not, and it's the same idea here, that in a complex situation, you have to practice. You have to train. That's also something that was learned in the military, the art of military preparation a few centuries ago. And the last piece of sort of global thinking on analysis before I move into the lean and 2.0 stuff deeper is that if you think about what Frederick Taylor has sort of built, it clearly has come to a limit because of complexity. Although the idea of breaking down and specializing makes perfect sense when you try to address a difficult or a complicated problem, when you try to address something which is complex, by definition, something that is complex is something that is hard to break down, to reduce by decomposition. And what sort of the world is sort of now realizing is we have more and more complex problems to solve that requires orchestration, that requires people to work together. If you sort of stand back, the ideal company from Frederick Taylor is you have a big thing that we want to do together and we're going to breaking down so that each of you make one piece, and the union of all of this is going to make the common thing that we do. In today's world, unfortunately, because what we're doing is difficult and complex, we have to work together. And I say unfortunately because we have to collaborate, which is not easy, and we have to communicate, and which takes time. So now I've sort of laid the groundwork. Let's sort of go back and see what are the possible solutions to solve those challenges. The first idea is, as we said, that when you have a complex problem, you have to go there, you have to meet the problem to solve the problem. And that's really the Genshi Genbutsu of the lean management philosophy. It's also something that used to be called management by walking around. It's an idea that has been there for a while. Henry Mintzberg, in his last book, Managing, talks about it for many, many pages without ever saying the word lean, but it's exactly the same idea that when the situation is difficult and the problems are complex, you cannot rely on people reporting to you what the problem is. He has very, very interesting pages about the pitfalls of abstraction, of models, and of sort of reporting. If you have something which is really difficult, you have to sit. If you hear people who tell you about it in a chain with three links, you can't work. It won't work. The other principle, quote unquote, is for solving this problem, you have to go and meet with the problem, but also you have to listen to the people who are actually living with the problem. And here also you recognize a tenet of the lean philosophy. In the next following slides, I'm going to sort of try to point out the shifts that I've seen in the management style. I don't have a clear vision. I'm not able to tell you the management style of the 21st century is this and this and this. I'm just trying to point out the changes and pointing out that the new manager, they have to go and they have to visit the Gemba. And it's especially important for IT. And that's something which is not so common yet. Complexity means that we need more facts and fewer concepts. And for us French people, it's actually hard to live with. And we have been trained to solve problems with concepts. We sort of take the abstraction, take the data which is kind of dirty, make nice models, and solve the problems with the model. And what science is telling us about complexities, it's not going to work like this in the next century. It's true for biology, it's true for many other disciplines, that the new science, you do it with the real facts, and then you do the model later. And the last thing is you experiment rather than you analyze. It's another consequence of the complexity. Something that we have learned from the fact, from experience, but that's why trying and trying is much better than thinking when you have hard problems to solve. I was saying that if you have a complex problem, it requires teamwork. So you need people to work together, and I really mean together, so I mean to collaborate, which is one of the key reasons why Kaizen is so important in Lean. One thing I heard that sort of struck me last year when I was hearing Michael Ballet telling about the Lean manager is that he was describing Kaizen as a way to, as a management tool, and as a way to teach people how not only to solve their problem, but to work together, to learn how to solve a problem as a team. And I think it's a very, very strong point. I would say that it's one of the major reasons for trying to deploy Lean in a large company when you have hard technical problems, is to let people discover that together they can work, they can solve really hard problems. I will say a few words later on about collaborative methods, but collaboration is hard. That's also something that was said earlier, and which I very strongly believe. I will tell you about Andrew McAfee later on. Andrew McAfee wrote probably the reference book about Enterprise 2.0, and he quoted a very interesting finding after the 9/11 tragedy. One of the major findings of trying to understand why all the proper leads had not been followed is that people don't like to collaborate, they don't like to share information. There is a wonderful quote saying, well, unfortunately, human beings being as they are, they actually don't like to share information. That's a fact. So trying to make it happen, whether you're doing Lean or not, is going to require quite some work and a change of culture. There is also a change in the management thinking and management culture. The autonomy is required to make this happen, so it's a new style of management. And if you want people to collaborate, you need to provide them with recognition. That's a key finding from people who try to develop 2.0, and it's true for Lean as well. If you move from a world where each of you, you have a very nice job description, you know what you're supposed to do, and at the end of the year I say, very well, you've done your job description, and you get your performance reviews. And we move from that world to a world where all of you collaborate to something. If there isn't someone who sort of irradiates recognition, who make the recognition works, it won't work. It won't work. It's hard to actually install in a company. The need for everybody's brain is something which is very old in the Lean culture. I mean, the quotation from Toyota is like almost 50 years old. It's the consequence of the complexity. The complex problems requires not only people to work as a team, but actually large teams, people with very different viewpoints and different culture. Another interesting consequence of the complexity is that there is no perfect solution. The solutions actually change continuously because the environment is changing. The right way to do things doesn't really exist. There is the better way at some point, and it has to change. One of the most common misunderstanding about Lean is the idea that the standard is going to freeze the company's creativity. And the standard is there to help you, to help people progress together as opposed to on their own. But the idea is that the standard is sort of there to be a challenge and something that you improve continuously. And to make this work, the manager's role is very different. In this new world, the manager doesn't have the solution. If you look at most companies, people are promoted because they're good at what they're doing, and they go one step after another, and somehow they are legitimate because they say to the people who work with them, what you're doing I've done before, so I know what you're doing, I could help you. If you take this seriously, the manager's role is not to solve the problem, it doesn't have the solution. It's rather to empower people to make the Kaizen happen. And there are other people that will actually help the learning to happen. So it's a different way of running the company. And last, I want to sort of come back to this idea of continuous skill learning. Complexity requires that you acquire new skills all the time. This is especially true for IT because of the technological changes. Sorry. But it's true almost everywhere, to be frank. It's not. And this is why. So you have seen that each time I'm sort of quoting one of my favorite books. So that at the end, if you like what I'm saying, you can read those books. And here, for me, my reference is Michael's Ballet, The Lean Manager. But with sort of one key idea is that technical skills matter. That's also something that there was a strong push to make us believe, especially in IT, that once you have the right architecture, developers you can sort of outsource to anywhere you want at the cheapest cost, or the technical skills don't matter anymore if you have the right big picture, which is totally untrue. I mean, because doing a large-scale, real-time transactional system is still difficult. It's still difficult. Technical skills do matter in IT everywhere. And what I loved about Michael's book is that it makes that point very clear. That, so one of the goals of deploying a lean management approach is to help people develop your people, make them learn new skills, and grow your skill base. So now I'm going to shift to Enterprise 2.0 and try to give you a feeling of why I have a nice title. It says it's a cure to the common congestion. So what is the common congestion? Is the fact that in most large companies, the amount of information that needs to go through is so large that we spend most of our time moving that information around, and it takes simply too much time. So that's, I would say, is a problem that we have independently, irrespectively of the Web 2.0 culture. It's a fact of life that you just Google and find the number of people that write about too much email, too much meetings, too much whatever. It's there. The problem is there. And what I'm going to tell you is Enterprise 2.0 is actually a set of practices and a set of tools. It's mostly a set of practices. The tools are nice, but if you don't have the practices, if you don't have the culture, the tools don't help much. And those tools, they are going to provide the enterprise with better communication, with a way to leverage the strengths of communities, and techniques to improve or strengthen the collaboration. The cute comment here is that the larger the company, the bigger those problems are, and the more I believe the company should look into making 2.0 practice. Surprisingly, it's the total opposite. That is, small companies have adopted 2.0 very easily, whereas those communication problems are not very big. I mean, if you work in a nice 15 people startup, it's very easy to communicate. You don't need tools. If you work in a 100 people company, it's not that hard either. If you work in a 10,000 people company that actually work together, those problems are quite huge. So the first benefit of the Enterprise 2.0 practice is to allow for faster communication. Managing information flows so that the information gets faster to one place to another has been recognized as one of the key management problems for a long time. I'm quoting March and Simon. It's quite an old book, but there are wonderful sentences that could have been written like yesterday as opposed to 30 years ago, saying in a large company, having the right information flow from one organization to another is crucial to the competitiveness and to it's how you take the right decision. It's actually, it's part of running the business processes. I'm sort of reminding you that I came onto Enterprise 2.0 from this analysis of how can I make my business process run more efficiently. And I say, well, if I look at what people are doing, they are talking all the time. So the first thing I have to be able to do is make them communicate faster. And the good news is there are a number of practices which actually allow to make information get there faster. Microblogging, which is using like Facebook-like statuses to pass short pieces of information, is extremely powerful. For those who are interested, the book that I'm going to quote later on by Andrew McAfee is a good source of information, but you Google, it's actually easy to find. Andrew McAfee's blog is actually also a very good source of first-hand real experience. People who have actually demonstrated that they get their information passed around faster. Another benefit of the 2.0 practice of communication is that it's quote unquote, woven into the fabric of time. That is, you can communicate while you're doing something else. So it's a way to reuse each crumbs of time that's there in the day. And there are anecdotal evidence that it actually helps the right information to move around faster. Another benefit is the self-organizing property of 2.0 tools. That is, when information moves, it's actually organized and glued together by teams, by keywords, by projects. There are many ways of making the information self-assemble as opposed to get into your email, into your mailbox, so that you have to sort it. And one of the benefits, one of the systemic benefits of 2.0 is to do less sorting. So it's a very lean way of looking at it. So a second benefit is being able to reach the right people. If you think about the tools that we use, phone, email, you only communicate with the people that you know. And when you have a problem to solve, you will actually leverage, ask questions to the people that you know. It's the way those things are built. It's called the club effect. It's a very well documented thing. So you live in a company with 10,000 people. There are like the 150 that you know. And they are your support system. Whenever you have a problem, you ask them. The goal of a 2.0 approach is to leverage the 9,000 others. So maybe not all of them, I will come back to. But at least to have a way to address people by functions, by projects, as a function of what they're doing. You have a way to open your social networks. One of the strong benefits of the 2.0 practice, for the lack of a better word, is to have a way to reach a larger audience, to address more people, and very often you ask the question to the wrong people only because you actually know that guy, whereas there is someone in the company who could help you much faster. So I gave a similar talk a year ago, and Michael Ballet said, well, this is terrible. You're telling me that in this 2.0 company, everybody speaks to everybody. So as a lean thinker, this is appalling. That means you're bringing more complexity. And for this to work, obviously, you have to practice 2.0 at multiple scales. That's something that Andrew McAfee explains very well, saying the enterprise 2.0 model is not a model where everybody talks to everybody, where there is one big bulletin board with 10,000 people talking to 10 other thousand people. It's sort of you have to do it at sort of different scales, and you have also to rely on a number of strengths, features of those platforms. To name a few, Stigmergy is the idea of attaching information to a place. Visual management is a form of Stigmergy. You can do this in a virtual way. That is, you can actually create spaces and attach information to spaces. So instead of broadcasting to a larger number of people, I simply broadcast to a space, and only those people who would come to that space will actually get that information. For those of you who are really IT-minded, you know about the publish and subscribe principle. That's sort of one of the key principles of middleware. A blog with RSS is actually an implementation of publish and subscribe. That's an efficient way of pushing information to the right people. So I'm not saying that information overload is not an issue, and I will be back on this. I'm saying an enterprise 2.0 approach has a number of techniques, ways of addressing those concerns. A third benefit, or third benefit of the 2.0 approach is leveraging the power of communities. So we're back to this idea of strengths of weak ties, being able to create a networks of people who share a common problem, a common project, a common concern, even if they are from different organizations. To give you, let's make a sort of a simple comparison. In a traditional company, when there is a new problem, at some point there is a management committee that says, well, we have a problem, we have to create something. So we have to create a project. So we select a product leader, the project leader selects a team, then we build a schedule and we build the committees, and the thing starts. It takes between 6 weeks to 6 months, and it's very often more 6 months than 6 weeks. if you have the proper tool, but mostly the proper culture, the community can self-assemble within a few hours and at most a few days. Because there is everything that is required to set up a project structure is there within the platform. So I was telling about collaboration. Those 2.0 platforms and tools can also be used to make collaboration easier, quote unquote. The first idea is to be able to co-edit, that is to work together at the same time on something. So what I call an artifact. The same thing can be a page of text, and it's a wiki. A wiki is actually working together on a piece of text. It could be a presentation, if you're using Google Docs. It could be a 3D prototype, and Dassault Systèmes has been working very, very aggressively on designing environments for people to work from different places of the world, in the world, on the same objects, on the same projects. So there are different ways of sort of implementing this principle, but the principle is some of the collaboration require people to be physically in the same room and argue, but some of it can be done remotely. And it's interesting to leverage the tools that exist to do the second part with IT and with tools. Another benefit of 2.0 tools is what I call mind synchronization, knowing what's on your colleague's mind. I don't know if who is using Facebook in the room and who is using Facebook with a colleague network or a friend's networks, but a benefit of using Facebook or similar tools is this exchange of micro statuses keeps you aware and alert about what's going on in other people's mind. And when you have to work together, you get to work together faster. So it helps the collaboration. It sort of makes people jump together in collaborative action faster. There are a number of other small benefits. You get tricks such as being able to comment, to vote, to share with one click. There are a number of small things that make a small group of people work together easier. Another interesting quote that I got from Bernard Charles, who is the head of Dassault Systèmes, is that to collaborate, you have to share not what you know, but what you don't know. And that's what makes it interesting and difficult. That's very close to what Pierre Pizardi was saying an hour ago. It's a very profound statement. That is, it's actually true that to make collaboration happen, you have to create a culture of trust, of confidence, so that people feel free to use the corporate system to say, I have this problem, I need to do this, I don't know how. And obviously, it's a hard proposition. That is, in many, many companies, you don't want to put publicly all the things that you don't know how to do. And so I'm saying this to sort of emphasize what I was saying about tools versus culture. The Enterprise 2.0 model, it's much more about culture than tools. The tools are there, and the tools are actually quite nice, but if you're in a company where people don't have the trust, you can push as many tools as you want, they simply won't be used. Or they will be used for everyone to publish how great they are and all the good stuff that they did, and that won't create collaboration. That will simply create additional information overload. So I said I would come back on this information overload issue, which is very, very much related to lean thinking. That is, what we want to avoid is reduce the amount of work in progress. I mean, we know now, I'm quoting Davenport here, but I have quoted March, because the fact that we have too much information and that the only thing that matters is attention, the time we have to process information, that thought has been around for 40 years. So that's, it's not a breakthrough. But my thinking is that we can apply lean thinking to this issue and try to, so what does lean tell us? It tells us that we should pull as opposed to push. So we should make it much more difficult to push information, and we should try to convince everyone to circulate information on a pull-based, on a need-based approach of philosophy. It's not that easy, though. So here I just wrote a few things that we've been trying for the last 10 years at Bouygues Telecom without much success, or with very slow success. We're trying to, as any company, we're trying to reduce the number of emails that is being sent. And we're trying to take a systemic look at it and say, okay, let's make it more difficult to send an email and easier to read an email. So let's have standards. So when you write an email, it has to be like this, and you have to send it to as few people as possible and so on. And we're going in the right direction, but it's a long way. So I will now finish with the last part about trying to understand what does lean management applied to a knowledge worker yields. So here I'm doing something which is almost an heresy for lean thinker. I'm trying to make lean in a schema, and you've all heard this morning that you shouldn't do that. Lean something that you learn by practice, and I told you that putting lean into concepts was a bad idea, but still it's going to be useful for the rest of for the other slides. What I'm saying here is that lean, there are three steps. There is a set of very interesting and thought-provoking ideas on how to optimize the process. You eliminate the muda, you streamline the process, you do leveling, you do just-in-time. So there are a number of techniques. Making those techniques work is hard. So the second step is the Kaizen, is actually now you have your process, you're trying to do all this, it doesn't work, and you work together, and you learn how to make this work, and by doing this, you get much better at your job. That's the second level is you do problem solving, and you enter continuous improvement. And if you practice this, then you actually learn new skills. So it's the last step is you learn skills, you get much better, you get a better understanding at the job that you're in. So if it could be IT, it could be hardware development. Okay. So now I'm going to try to apply this, which is very generic, to what we do that is mostly develop new products and new software. So those key principles in the middle, the lean engine, they apply rather well, I find, after to the situation that I see at Bouygues Telecom when people work together. The idea of just-in-time pool, although it's difficult to make it happen, it makes perfect sense. The goal is to make sure that the information is not pushed, but is actually sent at the right moment. That will be one way to avoid those mailboxes that are filled with no reason. If that works, yeah, no, it's not okay. Yeah, that's the pointer. That's, for instance, the way we do technology intelligence. We used to do technology intelligence. We have two offices. One is in Japan, the other one is in Silicon Valley. And they were pushing reports. Whenever something new was happening, there would be a guy saying, well, Apple is announcing this and this. I will crunch my report. I will send it in France to some manager that will sort of check and approve, and it will be sort of pushed in a website saying there's a new report. And that has been running for many years with the major complaint that the people from marketing who should be reading all those nice reports, they are too busy, they don't read the reports. So you have this nice technology intelligence office that creates very nice reports, but they are not being read. So what we're trying to do now is sort of making sure that those guys, they are sort of compelled to have a strategic agenda, that there is a manager who's sort of scheduling, trying to create a tact time for producing reports and making sure they arrive at the right rate and mostly at the right time, depending. There are moments in the year where reports can be read and moments where sort of it's irrelevant. So that's just one example. Another example that we've been working on, but that was very well explained this morning, so I'll be very quick. We try to do now all our difficult projects with one roof organization. That is, we put everybody together. And although this is totally inefficient from a critical skills management perspective, now our failure rate on big projects has dropped dramatically. And we found that the return on investment is absolutely there. So the application is the same principle of reorganizing your flow shop in a manufacturing plant applied to lean workers in a company. This morning there was this example that was quoting architects. There are a number of IT skills which are very rare. WebSphere, performance specialists. We have a number of those people who are very valued, and in the past they were run as a pool of shared resources which was very efficient to those people who were busy 100% of the time, but the lead time to have access to their skills was much too high. By shifting them back into the one-roof organization, we've made tremendous progress. Another concept that I think is extremely relevant for my new job, which is delivering new services and trying to innovate as much as we can, is this idea of validated learning, which I'm borrowing from Eric Ries' Lean Startup. The idea is that you should try to think about what is it that a set, you have an organization with like 100 people who are in quote unquote advanced projects and innovation department. And you're trying to think, okay, what is it that they actually produce for the company? And what they produce is validated learning. That is, they build stuff, and there is only value when we put that stuff in front of an end user that says, well, this is good or this is not good. And once you understand this, and you apply Lean and you try to reduce the time it takes from having an idea to exposing the idea to an end customer, you come up with this minimal viable product idea, saying let's wrap up this idea into something that we can show to the customers as quickly as possible, so that if it's great, then we will make it better and we'll start continuous improvement. But if it's stupid, and it's very often stupid because it's hard to know what our customers want, we'll know much earlier. And we have found this to be extremely relevant. To be frank, I'm not saying that we're applying this or that we're good at doing this. We're just saying that when we look at a typical year at Bouygues Telecom and look at all the crappy projects that went out, many of them could have been killed much, much earlier had we applied this. That's what I'm saying. So we're trying now to do this on a more regular basis, and maybe 2 years from now I will report to you that we're good at this, but we're not good at this yet. So continuing on this idea of applying Lean to my knowledge workers, if I sort of look at the last page was about my knowledge worker as an individual. This is about the system. Obviously, reducing the work in process is a great idea. The book from Rainer Stern is absolutely lovely and sort of says this much better than I'm going to do this. Many of the concepts, such as small batches or synchronization, do apply to people who are working to white collars in the innovation or project development world. I mean, here I have a very dumb illustration of what I was trying to say earlier. Where here you have somebody who is extremely busy, but whenever you ask him a question, it takes like 2 weeks to get the answer. And here you have the same guy working less, doing fewer things, but being able to answer quickly. And this is really a simple queuing theory insight applied to the knowledge worker organization, and it really works. We've tried this. We are working hard to make sure that we have fewer and fewer people who are working in this mode and more who are working in that mode, and it actually pays. Working in small batch, you have people here who are much more experts, and I think Mary Popendick will, for instance, just to name one, her books explain very well what the concept of small batch applied to software development gives. So I don't have much to add there. Two slides before I conclude. This one is about whether there are cross benefits, because so far I've been saying, okay, Lean and 2.0, there are actually very different ways of looking at the company, but they are aiming to solve the same issues, complexity, agility, and collaboration. So now we could say, well, can they benefit from one from another? I've been already telling you that putting some lean principle into the management of information flows makes sense. Here I'm trying to do it the other way, that is to say, well, what are the techniques and tools and practices from 2.0 that could apply to running a lean operation or to running Kaizens? So it's a difficult question, I've been asked, in the sense that the first lesson about lean is having real people together in front of the problem on the game board. So one of the questions is it useful to you to introduce tools that will make people work from far away? And I have sort of, I believe that you can do both, that all the tools that allow you to work over the world, for instance, when you have a large organization, that is people who are working in different time zones, being able to collaborate with asynchronous tools is still useful, so there is room for both. Tools such as blogs, wiki, all those tools that allow co-edition bring value even if you're trying to run a Kaizen event, something that we can discuss because it's arguable. What I found though is that even for processes where we actually do run our Kaizen events regularly, using the tools such as microblogging to make sure that everybody is aware of what's happening, that gives us a better flow of information and that it makes the Kaizen events more productful, more efficient. Yeah, I'll just focus on those two things. Here, there is something which is probably different in the world of manufacturing and in the world of a service organization or IT organization is the amount of information that we have to manage. We have to manage really large amounts of information, and capitalization of knowledge is a big issue. I believe it's a big issue everywhere, but it's especially big in a large IT organization or a large innovation organization. And all the techniques I was mentioning about self-organizing community sites and and forums, they are helpful. They can be leveraged and they can be mixed together with a lean approach. In the same way, if you try to apply the 5S to information, you will find that if you try to sort things and to get things well organized and to install a culture of sorting, sharing, and putting things in their place, you will find that the collaborative nature of storing, organizing, and sharing information that's part of the 2.0 approach fits very well to a 5S. So I would say if you want to do 5S on information, take a look at 2.0 platforms. They are very well designed to do this. I'll go very fast on this. There is a treasure of techniques to solve problems. I'm not mentioning that's something I talked about already, but there are a number of techniques, creativity techniques. Some of them are fairly simple. CPS is easy to run. Some of them are more complex. The theory of constraints is a very nice technique for solving complex problems. And there are trees or ASIT which are also more fancy. My message here is that if you do lean in IT or organizations such as the one we do, we often encounter problems which are really hard to solve, and creativity techniques have been helping us a lot. And I find it surprising that actually very few people know about creativity techniques. It's just like lean. It's a technique, it's a method. You have to learn, you have to practice. It actually takes years and years to train a good creativity manager or trainer, but it's something that's extremely valuable and which is totally underutilized. So, to conclude, the first idea is that scientific management as we know it, I mean, has reached its limits. That is, it's time to run the companies differently, mostly because the challenges that we have to face, the complexity, the quantity of communication, means that the breakdown and specialized approach doesn't work anymore. It also means that something that Don Jones said this morning, the old idea from Frederick Taylor that there are those people who do, and people in efficiency office that tells them the best way to do things, it doesn't work in a complex world anymore, any longer. So we really need to rethink the way we run the company. Enterprise 2.0 and lean management, they are obviously different. I'm not trying to make a big, confusing combination, but they have common grounds, and they are trying to attack similar problems, and they share a number of things. The fact that they rely on the transformation of culture transformation, and obviously they rely on changing the way the managers operate. So, which makes both of them hard, actually. And just to name a few of the things I've been telling you about, some of the similarities, in both cases, we rely on collaboration and teamwork, and the idea that we need everybody's brain. I mean, that's part of 2.0 culture, it's part of lean culture. In both cases, the idea of learning and growing skills is very strongly emphasized, and in both cases, it's a culture of facing facts, doing groundworks, and experimenting, as opposed to working on models and working on concepts. And I'll stop there.